Hey, folks. So, before we break into the Shadow Rising, I'm just going to take somewhere around 60 to 90 seconds to tell you that this episode of Wheel of Time Spoilers was sponsored in part by the Empathetic Sketchbook. While I tell you about it, since I know you've already got your phone or computer out, just go look it up on Amazon. Check it out. There's a link in the podcast description. I guess I wanted to start out by saying that when I saw this product and the creator reached out to me, I really legit thought it was a really fun and thoughtful idea. So, the Empathetic Sketchbook is essentially a 30-day project guide that's written and created by Lisa Rain. And for those of you hanging out in the Discord server, Lisa wanted me to encourage you to go ahead and message her about her products. She's at nerd_up. The book is broken down into 20 techniques and 10 topics. And the topics range from friends and family, the past and future, to how you view yourself. And they're essentially prompts to encourage you to evaluate your life and your own emotional state in new and healthy ways. It's intended to quickly teach you new methods and ways of looking at your sketchbook, and think like they're fun writing prompts, but for drawing.
I want to interrupt because I took a look through the sketchbook, and one of the things I found it really addressed was mental health. That it really seems to talk a lot about making yourself a little more centered. And I'll say that's something I've struggled with. You know, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I suffer from a fair amount of anxiety, and I take medication from that. And one of the things that really helps me is like a creative project. But I often have trouble finding some way to get started on a creative project. Right now, obviously, I'm focused on a certain podcast. But I think that something like this would have been super helpful to give me 30 things to just focus on and take my mind off of whatever particular issue that I'm having of that given day. Having this around the house would be a huge benefit.
Yeah, and that is one of the reasons that I thought this was such a lovely idea. Because I know people who already do this, but they just open up a completely empty, they just buy paper.
And that just gives me more anxiety.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Well.
And this is directed, so it avoids that angst of, oh gosh, what am I going to do with this blank page? I want to make something, I just don't know what.
Sometimes you don't want to approach your friends and loved ones with problems, and that's why people do stuff like this. Because shitty emotions are hard to manage on your own. And some of us are the type of person who prefer to meditate on those sorts of things privately. Like, I can totally understand and relate, because I'm totally not the kind of person who's got wearing my emotions on my sleeve, at least all the time. So, if you're interested in that idea, check out the link in the podcast description. It's called The Empathetic Sketchbook, created by Lisa Rain. Thanks, guys. Now, Shadow Rising.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. And today, we're here to talk about Chapter 1 of The Shadow Rising. Chapter 1.
No.
Of The Shadow Rising.
No.
What?
You got to read the prophecy.
Oh, okay. I forgot about it. The shadow shall rise across the world, and darken every land, even to the smallest corner, and there shall be neither light nor safety. And he who shall be born of the dawn, born of the maiden, according to prophecy, he shall stretch forth his hands to catch the shadow, and the world shall scream in the pain of salvation. All glory be to the Creator, and to the light, and to he who shall be born again. May the light save us from him. From Commentaries on the Koreathon Cycle. Serene Dar Shamel Motara, council sister to Koma El, forgive me for all of this, High Queen of Jeremiad, which is a kingdom that was sacked during the Trolloc Wars, if I remember right, 325 after breaking.
So this is 325 years after the breaking. That's about the time Kalendor may or may not have been being hidden. The stone was created. The Eye of the World was being created.
In those couple of confusing centuries that nobody knows too much about.
Exactly. So I have to wonder if maybe some part of this is a foretelling that helped them decide what to do. Because this particular line caught my attention for the first time. He shall stretch forth his hand to catch the shadow. In the last battle, he actually reaches out with his hand covered in the true power to grab the Dark One. And that prevents the Dark One from tainting the One power. Because he's using this glove. And literally takes hold of the Dark One. And based on the combination of the fact that he needs the true power through Kalendor and the timing of this prophecy, I have to wonder if this doesn't have something to do with the fact that Kalendor was hidden to await his return.
I like it. And the world shall scream in the pain of salvation. It's freaking metal.
But I had never actually looked at the date on that prophecy before, and just the date of it makes me think that it might have something to do with Kalendor in particular, especially because we just saw the seizing of Kalendor, and I bet Robert Jordan sort of in his head had finally decided what he was doing with it.
Yeah, you're probably right. This is going to be a longish read-in. Well, I guess not that much longer than lots of chapters, but it's certainly a very long chapter, which made me question why this is chapter 1 and not a prologue. Maybe RJ just hadn't figured out yet that...
I think we should talk about that. This is the only book that doesn't have a prologue of the 14.
Yeah.
And it's definitely the transition from the, we have this incredible long first chapter, which to me feels like a prologue. I feel like in any one of the other books, it would have been labeled prologue.
That's what I thought.
And it has a lot of perspective switches of relatively minor characters. They get more minor as the books go on. But we sort of see the White Cloak's perspective. We see Elida's perspective.
Yeah. I mean, there's Min in there. True. We have a perspective from Min and a perspective from Suroth.
Min has been traveling to the White Tower about the same amount of time that Rand has been traveling to Tyr. Now, he's been traveling faster, but is it possible that she actually got to the White Tower before he sees Kalendor?
It's hard to place events exactly, but we know that, for instance, they talk about Nynaeve, Elaine, Egwene when Gawain and Min run into each other, and we know that they have come and gone. And Min left after them. Min left after the girls. The girls left before her.
That's true. They were gone. Because she waited until Rand woke up, right? Was she there when he woke up?
She was in the camp, yes. She was in the camp with the Shinarans and Perrin.
Right.
Moraine and Lan. And when Moraine leaves, she sends Min. When Moraine leaves to follow Rand, she sends Min to the White Tower.
And so she's here on orders of Moraine.
So that makes sense, because that means Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine and Varen were like a couple months ahead, because the others, Moraine, Lan, Rand, Perrin, Min, stayed in the camp through the winter, or through most of it.
And so we're assuming that Min is arriving in the White Tower, like, within a few days, probably after Rand seizes Kalendor. I
assume so. I assume that, like...
we're moving forward in time.
Yeah. The events in the last book are happening. The events in the last chapter of the last book, which is The Dragon Reborn, happened right before this, or during, perhaps. But it would make sense if it happened days before even Swan Sanche hasn't heard the news yet, because it has to travel 1,000 miles or however far.
Right. Well, she's only hearing about what happened at the end of the Great Hunt.
Yeah.
Which is a whole book back. That's the word that Min is bringing, is the Great Hunt, and then the events that happened with the Sky and the Shan-Chan.
But before we get into it too much more, I'll read this. Sure. Chapter 1 of The Shadow Rising. Seeds of Shadow. And our symbol is, of course, the snake in the wheel. The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the Third Age by some, an age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose on the great plain, called the Caroline Grass. The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but it was a beginning. North and west, the wind blew beneath early morning sun, over endless miles of rolling grass and far-scattered thickets, across the swift-rolling river Luan, past the broken-topped fang of Dragon Mount, mountain of legend, towering above the slow swells of the rolling plain, looming so high that clouds wreathed it less than halfway to the smoking peak. Dragon Mount, where the dragon had died, and with him, some said, the age of legends, where prophecy said he would be born again, or had been. North and west, across the villages of Juald and Darren and Alendar, where bridges like stone lacework arced out over the shining walls. The great white walls of what many called the greatest city in the world, Tarvalon, a city just touched by the reaching shadow of Dragon Mount each evening. Within those walls, Ogier-made buildings well over 2,000 years old seemed to grow out of the ground, rather than having been built, or to the work of the wind and water, rather than that of even the fabled hands of Ogier stonemasons. Some suggested birds taking flight, or huge shells from distant seas. Soaring towers, flared or fluted or spiraled, stood connected by bridges hundreds of feet in the air, often without rails. Only those long in Tarvalon could avoid gaping like country folk who had never been off the farm. Greatest of those towers, the White Tower dominated the city, gleaming like polished bone in the sun. The wheel of time turns around Tarvalon, so people said in the city, and Tarvalon turns around the tower. The first sight travelers had of Tarvalon, before their horses came in view of the bridges, before their riverboat captains sighted the island, was the tower reflecting sun, like a beacon. Small wonder, then, that the great square surrounding the walled tower grounds seemed smaller than it was under the massive tower's gaze, the people in it dwindling insects. Yet, the White Tower could have been the smallest in Tarvalon. The fact that it was the heart of Aes Sedai power would have still overawed the island city.
So I think there's about 2 to 4 pages of recap in this book, which is totally acceptable.
Sure.
You're 3 books into this thing. You know, it's been a year since the last one came out.
Approximately 2,000 pages.
Right, yeah. You may not remember everything.
Fair.
And so and there's been a major stopping point. And I think he does a very good job of summing up what's happened over the last 3 books in a relatively small amount of time from Min's perspective. He talks about the White Tower, Tarvalon. But at the same time, it's not something that I necessarily want to go that deep into because it's mostly just a recap.
Sure. I figured we'd touch on a couple of things, but these are like a lot of things, especially our listeners, but anyone who's read this far would already understand. Like, the next few lines essentially talk about how, you know, on the island in the center is the tower, and it's surrounded by this square where, like, people kind of skirt around the edges and don't go too close to the tower unless they have business there. Everybody's sort of intimidated by it, you know? It's like your local courthouse. Like, you don't go hang out in the courthouse, you know?
You don't?
No. It's nothing I love more than watching traffic violations be settled.
So then you're saying you're there involuntarily?
Generally. I mean, yes. It's been a long time since I even had to go do a traffic ticket.
Last time I had to go to court was actually for jury duty.
Yeah, makes sense.
I didn't get picked, but I had to go in and get not picked.
I got a letter right before I left for the PCT, and I just sent them a letter and was like, hey, not going to be able to make it. Hope I'm not a fugitive when I come home. And they don't really care. No. If they just say, like, hey, I'm in another state right now, I can't.
Right.
Thank God somebody was reading my mail for me.
Show up. I just got my ballot in the mail today to vote.
Yeah?
You didn't get yours.
I'm going to make sure I get that. That's not midterms yet, is it? It's just...
Yeah, it's midterms.
It's midterms already?
We vote by mail here in Oregon, and midterms are 4 weeks away. So they sent us ballots to fill out because you have time to fill them out and then mail. You have 4 weeks to fill it out and mail it back.
Jules went to work super early this morning, but I took in her mail for her, and I saw that she got at least one, but I think one of them was like vote on this one initiative. I don't know. I didn't really look that hard.
Oh, that's probably just an ad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
We've been getting a lot of direct mail ads on initiatives that I've been throwing out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't care. Don't send me mail about it. I'll just Google it. Send me my ballot.
The nice thing about having mail-in ballots is we get the ballot at home, so I can sit down on the internet and research every single vote before I fill it out.
That's what I do.
And then once it's all filled out, I just mail it back.
Doesn't take long.
No. Don't have to take time off work. I can do it at night. I can do it ahead of time. And it doesn't force me to, like, memorize and randomly, like, oh, court district judge, I've never heard of these two people. I have no idea who to vote
right.
for.
Or even the position. Like, I wasn't even aware.
And so we can actually
Google it
just at the time and learn their positions.
I'm going to segue right into so enter Min.
Yes.
Min is walking across the tower grounds. She's got her hood up and her hair's a little longer, and she's hoping she's not recognized because she was sent by Moraine to send a private messages to Swan, the Emerald Seat.
And so she looks a little different. She's dressed a little different than normal. She has longer hair.
She's not wearing pants. And by that I mean she's wearing a dress.
Right. But I did notice later one of the ways that Swan gets her to change her appearance is with makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't really occur to me before, but I was thinking, like, you can really change your appearance a lot with makeup. And
Sure.
so with longer hair, a dress, and a different face, she would look like a totally different person.
And if people are used to you wearing like pants and a untucked shirt, and she like I imagine Min early books like kind of dirty, like a horse hand, because that's what she is.
Right.
So she looks like kind of a boy that's been playing in the mud all day.
That's not mud.
In the
If you've been around horses,
yeah, I know.
it's not mud.
in the first couple of books, but after this, she gains a bit of fashion. Although she doesn't hold on to the dress and makeup for very long, she does she's like the inventor of the pantsuit in the Wheel of Time. Really,
Kind of.
yeah. I feel like it wouldn't be weird if I saw a young lady on the street wearing that exactly.
Yeah, they talk about her heeled boots. That's
Boots,
just
tights,
heels. Yeah, tights and like
suit jacket thing.
yeah, sort of more of a. I always think of it as more of a boxy jacket.
Yeah, Kelsey did a really good Min at SpoilerCon.
I liked Kelsey's a lot. Yeah.
Those who remembered her in the tower remembered a young woman with close cropped hair, always in a boy's coat and breeches, never in a dress. It had to be a good disguise. She had no choice about what she was doing. Not really.
Because she loves Rand. That's when she says she has no choice. It's because this is what she's decided to do to support a boy.
Yes.
It's just that she has no choice because she's forced to fall in love with him. But don't we all not really have a choice in who we fall in love with?
Not really.
Love is pretty blind.
There's like a little bit here where a little more on. There's almost no men among the petitioners because men are even more afraid to go to the tower than women, who are also nervous about it.
I like how she says, with luck, she'd be back on the gelding in a few hours, riding for the ridge and on the road south. It's like, Robert Jordan loves to prove his characters wrong. You're not going anywhere.
And then we see lines like, prophecy said the dragon would be born again in mankind's greatest hour of need to fight the Dark One and Tarmangaidon, the last battle, and so on. We know all this stuff.
Thanks for the recap.
Min walks to the group of petitioners. There's 3 or 4 accepted walking around. I thought it was kind of fun to note that she knows most people don't understand the difference between what an accepted or an Aes Sedai is. So when they see one, they just kind of bow and curtsy to these young women who aren't, don't have any real authority. These are like, the like low-level administrators of the Aes Sedai. These are like entry-level, paper pushers.
There is something to be said for an accepted, though. They have passed a test. They have the ring. They have a certain control over the one power.
Oh, sure.
That does put them at a level that's way above a normal person.
Sure.
And so I kind of get the deference, even though Min is a little dismissive of it.
Well, yeah, and Min kind of she has the thought that the people are so deferent to these accepted because they don't understand the difference. They think these women might be Aes Sedai.
I wanted to talk to you about the splinter quote. A man will cut off his own hand to get rid of a splinter before asking help from an Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
Women meant it as a compliment on men's stubborn foolishness. But Min had heard some men say the loss of a hand might be the better decision.
I mean, it's obviously like boastful talking or like joking around, like, but it, it's also kind of not joking. Like, it makes them really nervous.
It has a kernel of truth to it that the Aes Sedai in particular are, once they get to know you, once they have once they've healed you, not only do they know where you are at all times if you get close, which I'm sure is not what this is referring to, but they have a tie to you, and Aes Sedai like to use people, and sometimes the people they use break.
Sure.
So I understand where that comes from. Like, maybe losing a hand is better than being used by an Aes Sedai, unless you're a warder, in which case that's your life.
Cody says foreshadowing. Fair, could be.
Yeah, I mean, Rand is Darth Rand when he loses his hand.
Yeah.
And
refusing help from
anyone. So it might be the loss of his hand has a lot to do with his refusal to ask help from Aes Sedai. So you could say Rand literally loses his hand to get rid of a splinter.
So Min approaches the group of petitioners. Faolain walks up to her, who's accepted we know of, and has kind of like minor roles in the series so far.
She ends up being sort of one of Egwene's supporters in Salidar, even though she really hates her.
I didn't even realize that.
There's this whole back and forth. She's sort of one of those who's raised to Aes Sedai without swearing on the oath rod.
Gotcha.
So she's in that in-between status and ends up being one who Egwene can truly count on. She doesn't have much resolution to her storyline. She's not really mentioned in the Sanderson books.
No, she's like a Theta character.
Yeah, so the assumption is she ends up going to the Black Tower. She ends up bonding one of the Ashaman, and the assumption is she fights the last battle and survives.
I didn't know all of that.
I looked it up. But yeah, I always think of Phelan as naive without the redeeming qualities.
I mean, she's just kind of a low-level jerky bureaucrat. I think we can all kind of know what
she
that's
gets a
like.
little bit of power and like,
yeah,
she's like kind of reddish almost. She like represents the Red Oddjob, but like not irrationally so.
So I suppose I could see what you mean.
Although I think she's yellow.
Faolain says, welcome to the tower. How can we help you? And Min's like, I have a question for the Amyrlin. And Faolain's like, yeah, it's going to take a long time to get a meeting with the Amyrlin, so why don't we try to do something else about that? And Min's like, no. I came here to ask a question to the Amyrlin herself, and I know that I have the right, and you can't tell me no. And Faolain's like, why don't you ask the question to... And Min's like, I have a question for the Amyrlin. Come on.
Just go tell her my name. If she doesn't want to see me, she doesn't have to see me.
She's like, okay, good luck waiting a couple weeks. What's your name?
Yeah.
Elmandretta.
Which, the first time I read, didn't realize has Min inside of it.
Mm-hmm. It's Min's real name.
Yeah,
she just hates it.
Yeah. And Min is the shortened version of it.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of like Beth and Elizabeth.
Yeah. Okay. And then some Aes Sedai and warders are walking around, and we start getting our first viewings because chapters with a direct Min perspective always end up longer because she constantly has viewings about people.
And she rarely knows what they mean, but we certainly do.
Of course. I'm going to go ahead and read the first 3 or 4 here because we're going to be able to sum this up really quickly. A slender woman with black hair. She was of the yellow. Her name was Ananda. Wore a sickly brown halo, shriveled and split by rotting fissures that widened as they decayed. Another, Green Aja. On her shoulder, as if nestled among grapevines and flowering apple branches, worked on her shawl, sat a human skull. The third wore no shawl. She seemed to be casting cool blue eyes on the petitioners through a tattered curtain of blood, crimson streamers running down her face. No one but Mid knew. Those 3 women were all going to die on the same day, which is, of course, and this goes on as we walk through the halls. We'll go over it all, but this is the battle in the tower, the split.
Yes, I agree with that. There is the one viewing of the woman with the silver collar around her neck, though.
The battle at the tower for that. The Shanshan, I'd hardly call it a battle. It's a suicide mission.
Oh, so
The battle with the Shanshan.
you're saying all these deaths come from the battle with the Shanshan?
No, from the split. I assume they were all from the split.
Yes, they come from the split. So I guess that's an interesting question: is why is she seeing images from both of those? Why does she see the woman with the silver collar at this point?
I would think so, because she's walking through and seeing everyone's future, and within the next year.
Yeah.
I mean, the split in the tower will be soon.
Right. That's within weeks, I think.
But when the Shanshan come at the tower, that is after the tower splits. The second tower happens in Saladar,
Yes.
and Egwene is taken prisoner.
Yes.
It's during that time. So that's a couple books.
And the rebels are still camped outside.
Yeah. Bran outside commanding the rebels still, I think. Is that right? The tower is attacked when the rebels are camped outside?
Mm-hmm. Because it's the abduction of Elida that allows Egwene to step into power inside the tower, thereby becoming the Amyrlin seat of both the rebel group and the White Tower group.
By then, everybody's just like, good riddance. Get out, Elida.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
What a tyrant. Elida's just a terrible tyrant. Not yet. She also hasn't had the taint of Fane yet.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a ton in previous episodes, but Elida often has great hunches. She just like gets some details wrong and executes them in like way the wrong direction. Like she has this idea that Caemlyn's going to be super important crux of the last battle and it has to be protected. Good, great idea. But the way to do that is not by imprisoning Rand al'Thor. That's not.
These aren't ideas, they're foretellings.
Yes.
She's not coming up with them. She is the gift of foretelling.
But then she misinterprets them.
I was going to say
Yeah.
the failing of misinterpreting them.
Right.
Yeah. She's terrible at because we'll talk about it when we get to it, to her perspective.
Oh, yeah. No one but knew these three women were going to die all on the same day. Arguing with Valane more.
Mm-hmm. How much she hates her name. Elmendreda. But it's sort of the code because she's hoping
That Swan
knows it.
is she knows that Swan is one of the few people who's heard the name Elmendreda. I think even like Rand and Perrin don't know that her real name is Elmendreda.
Well, she's not spreading it around, that's for sure.
She hates it.
She's not telling the boy she's got a crush on what her
What her
name is.
actual ugly name is.
Totally. Especially that name, which is all about fawning over boys.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Very well. I will send word to the Keeper of Chronicles that you wish to see the Amyrlin seat personally, Elmendreda. Min wanted to slap the woman for the way she emphasized Elmendreda.
I'm trying to think of an equivalent name. It would be like...
Oh, I don't know. Gertrude.
But not even that. If there was like
an old-fashioned name people don't like anymore.
I was thinking more just like a notoriously like if you were... Okay, Liz Tyler. Like, like some name like that where you're like, why are you named after this ridiculous famous person with this overbearing personality? Or
Leia suggests Cookie.
Yeah.
Travis suggests Paris Hilton.
Paris, or Beyonce. It's like, hi, my name's Beyonce. And be like, all right, Beyonce. It's not your actual, you're not the Beyonce. And it's a ridiculous name. So she's following Moiraine's advice, which is trust no one and avoid notice until you reach the Amyrlin. So she's doing her best to hide her, who she is, because, again, Black Oddjaw.
Right. Could be anywhere.
Which turns out they are watching
Nodding.
for Sarah.
Another accepted came to replace one already there, and to Min's eyes, bars floated in front of her apple-cheeked face, like a cage. Shuriam standing around, and Min gets more nervous because Shuriam does know who Min is, and will recognize her if she sees her face. Shuriam, who knows her all too well, and the red-haired Aes Sedai's face seemed to be battered and bruised. It was only the viewing, of course.
So she must get beat up during the rebellion, but she escapes to be in Salidar.
Yes. I also, with that one, I assume that this viewing and like the rest of them that we see in this chapter all have to do with the split in the tower that's going to happen very soon. But Shuriam is black, and she has lots of other stuff going on.
That's true.
And it made me wonder if she, like, Doesn't she like catch a beating a couple of times, and then she gets a few fingers cut off later?
Totally. So I think this actually
failing.
is more of a foretelling of things that are happening to her in Salidar when she's supposed to be manipulating the new childlike Amerlin, which is Egwene, and she basically gets beat up a lot and takes a lot of damage. Not in ways that are visible. They're like beneath clothing and stuff. But she takes some really bad beatings. And I think this foretelling refers to that in particular.
I suspected that, but I don't remember the next time Shiriam has a bruise on her face. It could be from any number of things.
But yeah, Halima has a go at her because she's a Forsaken.
Oh, right.
Yeah. She's technically Bethamel.
Balthmel? That's one of the hard ones.
We call her Halima.
But yeah,
or,
that was much easier.
Arengar? I believe Osengar is Agenor.
I can never remember which is which.
Death, wounds, captivity, and death.
Yeah. Right after she sees another brown Aja.
Dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge.
And then, of course, a novice shows up almost right away and says, Elmandretta, right this way. The Amerlin wants to see you.
Of course she does, because it's Min.
Right. And Min always has important things to say.
Right. And this is Sarah, poor Sarah, who gets banished to a farm and then killed by the Black Aja for her information.
That was another fact that I didn't realize.
She was tortured. Yeah, there's a scene where she's tortured to death.
Thanks for looking this stuff up. She's a cute but unimportant character who fawns over Gawain, and I think that's all she ever does, except for lead Min to the Amerlin.
Totally. And she also lets Elida know some information.
Well, that's not her fault.
No, it's totally not her fault. Yeah, but she gets the bum rap because she gets, for randomly being in on this meeting, she gets banished to a farm. And then there's a scene where we don't know who it is. It's just an Aes Sedai shows up and starts questioning her, and first she starts screaming and dies.
She's just a pawn. She's just stuck in the game, and there's nothing. She's not important, which is why.
Not to you or me, but I think she's an important person.
To the plot of the whatever. Everybody's important. You're all special snowflakes.
But she doesn't. I don't think she ever has any like relevant information.
No. This is all she knows. That she like leads a woman to the Amerlin, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Then she's sent away.
There's the conversation with Gawain she overhears.
Oh, that's true.
And there's some relevant details in there.
Establishing the connection.
Mm-hmm. Certainly for Elida.
I'll read this little part to just really hammer in the point here. Warders hurried by with barely a glance for the two women. Men who moved like hunting wolves, their swords only an afterthought to their deadliness, but they seemed to have bloody faces or gaping wounds. Swords and spears danced about their heads, threatening. Their auras flashed wildly, flickered on the knife edge of death. She saw dead men walking, knew they would die on the same day as the Aes Sedai in the entry hall, or at most, a day later.
So I think those viewings we can be certain are due to the split in the tower.
Yes.
But I think there are other viewings that are occurring that she doesn't know are going to happen on the same day, like Shiriam's beating, like the Silver Collar, that we can say are viewings of other futures these people are going to have.
Totally.
They don't have to happen on the same day, except when she states that they are on the same day.
And as she's being led down the hall, Min sees Gawain, who stops and tries to talk to Min. Does talk to Min.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to get at anything in this conversation between Min and Gawain. I think there was a point, at least, I wanted to make about it. Gawain says, do you know where they are? And Min says, holy shit, they never got here. And he says, no, they got here, but then they left and nobody knows where they are again.
Right. And so she's like, yeah, I don't know anymore than you do.
Yeah, no, I just got here myself.
Mm-hmm. I guess just the fact that he's going to be wounded on the same day. So we've linked that wound to the split in the tower.
For a moment, streaks of dried blood had made his face a grim mask. Gawain, I don't know where they are. You're certainly not going to help them by pissing off the Amerlin and delaying me, she says, essentially.
If you don't know what's going on with the three women, it's probably because they don't want you to know.
Yeah.
So stop asking. A little quote, Sarah seemed to have forgotten everything except Gawain. She's just looking at him with moon eyes. Yeah. Oh, you're pretty.
I mean,
Enjoy it, Sarah.
He's a reasonably attractive, very fit prince of a nation. So it's not that weird that, especially I see Sarah as a very young novice, so it's,
Those calf eyes will get you killed.
he's literally a prince.
That's true. That's true. Aren't some of the novices, though, like significantly older than some of our main characters? Because
Some are.
They spend some of them are like 30, easily.
Or they spend a long
10,
time as a
15
novice.
years as a novice.
Yeah.
And they could totally be older if the White Tower actually took in older women, but they don't because they're stupid. And then we can start getting into just how stupid Gawain is and how his assertions really make me angry.
I wanted to touch on something here for a second. I don't know if I'm skipping ahead of what you wanted to talk about, but when Gawain says, "That has been my duty since the day she was born, my blood shed before hers, my life given before hers. I took that oath when I could barely see over the side of a cradle. Gareth Bryn had to explain to me what it meant. I won't break it now. Andor needs her more than it needs me." And that's all true. That's all literally true. And I think what I kind of wanted to get at there, and this was the only thing the only kind of interesting thought that I had while reading this conversation, was that Elaine disappears. She's off doing her thing. Galad goes off and does his own thing. Randalthor is off doing his own thing. And Gawain is left here at the tower, and he becomes a confused boy who decides to... He makes some bad judgment calls.
Some.
Many.
All.
Pretty much all of his judgment calls are bad. But he makes some really bad judgment calls, I feel like, A, because he does not know what to do with his fucking life. Without having Elaine there to hover around and protect, without living in his coddled court of Andor, he doesn't have a purpose in life. Also, his whole life, and this he kind of breaks it down here, this is really important to him. The whole thing that defines the entire point of him living is to say this oath to the future queen of Andor and die before she dies and assure that. Make sure that this is his purpose. This is his whole purpose. And when that's all gone, I just thought it was interesting, and I kind of made the connection that when that's all gone for him and he doesn't have this purpose left, what he does do is decide to side with Elida because she is the authority that he took oaths to. That's the way he perceives it. We all hate the decision. We think he's wrong, and it's awful. He kills Hammer. Everything sucks. But that's my interpretation of how he's thinking.
I disagree with you entirely.
Really?
Yeah.
Shit. Okay.
One, he claims this is his dedication, but when he has an opportunity to go to her and when he knows where she is, he completely ignores his duty to Elaine. So I can't take anything he says here about his duty seriously, number one. Number two, the reason he obeys Elida has nothing to do with the fact that she's an authority figure or, she follows the law. It has everything to do with the fact that he's angry at Suan for not telling him where Elaine is. And he takes that anger out on her and her side of the alliance. And he justifies it to himself with this logic that is infuriating. And it's just because...
And it's all very personal.
He is an emotional child and cannot deal with the fact that he doesn't get to know where Elaine is at every single moment of his life. Or Egwene, which is actually who he's concerned about. He's not at all concerned about Elaine here.
Much less concerned about his sister, much more concerned with the cutie pie that he met recently.
Exactly.
Yeah, teenage boys.
So, I mean, not that it's not one or the other. It's certainly a combination of the both.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to throw that out there because I feel like most of the conversation, and I don't really want to defend him, but most of the conversation about Gawain is how much everybody hates him, and it's totally understandable. But I wanted to maybe throw out a little bit of, how confused this boy is.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And I get him. He wants to help, and he doesn't really know the right way to go about it. And he's like, there's this one authority figure who seems to be...
And stuff's complicated.
Yeah, totally. And, we're all blind. If we see a side that we believe in, and it looks like the vote totally legitimized this overthrow of this person that you hated, you're going to be like, yeah, sweet, support her. I'm going to stop. And meanwhile, this old dude who's being like, kid, you're wrong.
Dude, that I feel like is all right, I don't want to simplify it too much, but the reason I can never like Gawain is because he kills Hammer. It's just you idiot. You think you know more than this guy? You dumbass. Of course not. You need to follow. If he wanted to pick an authority to follow, he should have picked his teacher moving forward.
Hammer is one of those characters who we see, twice?
Not much.
Time. And yet, I love it. He's like he's such a cool...
It's a lovable hard ass.
Yeah, totally. He like, one of the things where I'll go off about how much I love Robert Jordan is just how much character he's able to pack into a few sentences.
Also, I gotta say, one of the few dialogues, one of the few times we really ever got to know anything about Hammer is when he humiliates Gawain.
Totally. And he's on Matt's side, and it's it's the bet, right? Like, he's the officiant of the bet between Matt and Gawain and Galad.
Right.
And we're just
it's like, no, you're not backing out of this.
Yeah.
I want to see this.
I want to see you beat over the head with a staff.
Yeah.
And we're like, yes. And I have to wonder if maybe that's not why he killed him.
I mean, I don't really think so.
I don't think so
but
either. I'm just being, I was being a little funny there. But
Hammer does certainly give us this, oh, you think you're fancy pants, Mr. Prince?
Yeah.
Let's see how fancy pants you are.
And having read through the whole series, it's a very satisfying scene.
Yes.
I know Elaine isn't a child, he said patiently. You still think of her like one, though.
Yeah. Min says a lot of things like, watch what you say. If you make the Amerlin angry with you, Elaine and Egwene might be punished for that.
Which they wouldn't be.
No, probably not, but... That I cannot promise, he said firmly. Something is wrong with the world. He's right.
The Dark One's coming back.
It's 3 civil wars, a bunch of false dragons, troubles and rumors of troubles everywhere. I don't say the Tower is behind it, but even here things are not what they should be, or what they seem. Elaine and Egwene vanishing isn't the whole of it. Still...
Gawain's such a conspiracy theorist. Oh, I'm not saying the Tower's behind it, but what if the Tower's behind it?
I'm giving Seth a significant look and nodding.
Okay, Joe Rogan. I mean, Gawain.
The Gawain Experience.
Jesus. What an awful podcast that would be.
Elaine and Egwene vanishing isn't the whole of it. Still, they're the part that concerns me. I will find out where they are, and if they have been hurt, if they are dead. He scowled, and for an instant his face was that bloody mask again. More. A sword floated above his head, and a banner waved behind it. The long-hilted sword, like those most warders used, had been a heron engraved on its slightly curved blade, the symbol of a blade master, and Min could not say whether it belonged to Gawain or threatened him. Both, is my opinion on that. It's not Gawain's sword, it's Hammer's sword. Gawain becomes a blade master.
I can be nodding.
During the split.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I saw.
I think that scowl is in particular, he's feeling that emotion and that betrayal, and that's what leads him to failure. Yeah.
He's angry that he doesn't know where the girls are because he's obsessed with protecting them. Which is, as Min points out, kind of hilarious. Are you going to protect them with that sharp piece of metal? The will blow you and the acre of land around you into ashes.
Well, yeah.
What are you going to do with that sword, you silly man?
That's what I always wonder with the White Cloaks versus Aes Sedai. They're like, we must take down the Aes Sedai. I'm like, really?
Can you take down one, though?
It's not a great idea. You can surprise one at a time. I do, yeah. I think it's kind of cheap that he gets to practice against Hammer, and Hammer teaches him all the tricks, and then he uses them against Hammer.
Yeah, whenever I think of this too, I always think it's almost kind of the classic, he was one of my most promising students, and then the darkness came upon him, and he killed his master and walked the land. It's every anime ever made.
Right.
Killed his master and
then regrets it.
Yeah.
But he still chooses the wrong path every single time.
Yes.
Even when he goes over to Egwene, he betrays the younglings.
Dude.
That's he doesn't even stick with he does all this stuff with the younglings, and then my girlfriend's here. See you bros. I gotta go.
It's also extremely frustrating. Because every time I think of this, I just have to consider if Gawain had used the pull that he had, with whatever his charisma, his station,
sure,
however, and rallied the younglings to fight for Swan, everything could have gone completely different.
Look what happened with his brother and the White Cloaks. He uses his charisma and his ability and his knowledge to turn the White Cloaks from a destructive force to something that can help Perrin.
Point, end of debate. Galad is the best brother.
Totally. And he's prettier, too. So, like...
True.
Yeah.
No, I mean, go ahead and keep debating, but I think we made up our minds over here.
Oh, God. And then here, when he turns to Min, it's like, you ought to wear dresses more often. I'm like, yeah, why don't you just tell her to smile, too, while you're at it? Yeah, right? Like, oh, God.
Min stood with her eyes on the floor, her hood still pulled up around her face. Blundering in front of Sarah had been bad enough, though at least the novice did not know her name. But Leanne knew her better than anyone in the tower except for the Amerlin. Min was sure it could make no difference now. But after what had happened in the hallway, she meant to hold Moraine's instructions until she was alone with the Amerlin. This time, her precautions did no good. Leanne took 2 steps, pushed back the hood, and grunted as if she had been poked in the stomach. Min raised her head and stared back defiantly, trying to pretend she had not been attempting to sneak past. Straight, dark hair only a little longer than her own framed the keeper's face. The Aes Sedai's expression was a blend of surprise and displeasure at being surprised. "So, you are Elmendretta, are you?" Leanne said briskly. She was always brisk. "I must say, you look it more in that dress than in your usual garb." "Just Min," Leanne said if you please. Min managed to keep her face straight, but it was difficult not to glare. The keeper's voice had held too much amusement. If her mother had had to name her after someone in a story, why did it have to be a woman who seemed to spend most of her time sighing at men when she was not inspiring them to compose songs about her eyes or her smile? "Very well, Min. I'll not ask where you've been, nor why you've come back in a dress. Apparently, wanting to ask a question of the Amerlin. Not now, at least." Her face said she meant to ask later, though, and get answers. "I suppose the mother knows who Elmendretta is. Of course. I should have known that when she said to send you straight in, and alone. The light alone knows why she puts up with you." She broke off with a concerned frown. "What is the matter, girl? Are you ill?" Min carefully blanked her face. No, I'm all right." For a moment, the keeper had been looking through a transparent mask of her own face, a screaming mask. "May I go in now?" Leanne said
So that's her being stilled.
Realize, I think... Oh, yeah. I just think of that first moment when we see Leanne again, and she's... Is it alone with Swan?
I think she's
alone with Swan.
Sobbing
Yeah.
at that point. So I would assume this is a little bit earlier when she's, like, just after she's been stilled, or perhaps even being stilled.
Oh, God.
That's what Min is seeing, is her face while she's being stilled.
The screaming face, yeah. Leanne studied her a moment longer, then jerked her head toward the inner chamber. "In with you." Min's leap to obey would have satisfied the hardest taskmistresses.
Well, she did spend some time with the Shan Chan, so she got pretty good at obeying as a servant there.
Yeah, I always really liked Leanne as a person.
Leanne's fun.
I think she's an interesting character because she's like this Damani babe or whatever who like learns that she can channel, has this long serious career. She gets stilled and has to refigure her life out, and she's like, "Oh well, if I can't use those powers, I guess I'll use these powers."
She gets a second chance, and I feel like she gets to live out the fantasy we've all had of like, if I got to restart my life over again,
Yeah.
and I got to make different choices, what would I do with my life? And I feel like Leanne actually like had that opportunity, thought about it, and was like, "Yeah, I'd be a green instead of a blue."
Yeah.
You know? And there's a lot more that goes into it than that, but that sort of sums it up in saying.
And I feel like this plays right into it, but Leia's pointing out that in The Great Hunt, and gosh, I want to say maybe even in The Eye of the World, there's a couple of moments in Shinar where she's just like, if I was 47 years younger, or, whatever, I'm making up a number, but she literally says something like that. She's like,
she
"Ooh,
flirts
those
with
shoulders."
like Karen and Matt. Yeah, totally. Totally. And so then you have to wonder if maybe a little Taviran twisting didn't get her out of the blue and into the green.
Maybe, and eventually she gets repaired.
I mean, we talk about Taviran upending your life, the plow that changes what you're doing. Like,
is it Leanne Sharif? Sharif? Thank you, Timber.
Leia says she flirts with all of the boys, all three.
Oh, yeah. Well, And some of it isn't quite flirting, and it's more just like inappropriate comments. I just wanted to look up.
It's almost catcalling in reverse. Wolf calling?
Wolf calling. Leanne is right around Swan's age, so she's about 47 right now, something like that. 46 maybe.
So you're saying if I was 47 years older is not totally accurate because then she'd be a baby?
No, I didn't really mean it, but I was being funny because she's an Aes Sedai. Like, most people are like, if I was 10 years younger, but Leanna's has to be like, if I was 25 years younger.
I was going to say, if I was a century younger.
Yeah.
I think Codswain can make that joke. Because if she's a century younger, she's still 2 centuries old.
You, if I was 250 years younger.
I caught one reference in here to Shara. There's panels that have been brought from the mysterious land beyond the Aiel Waste.
Oh, right.
Just, and so you can sort of look at those panels.
And kind of interestingly, Suroth enjoys the same kinds of painted panels, which seem to be a Sharan style of art.
Sure. I feel like there's some overlap between the Shara and the Shan Chan in terms of like painted panels and stuff like that. And having looked at various maps of the globe, I always wonder if there wasn't some more trade going on between the Sharans and the Shan Chan than we were privy to.
I would think.
Because apparently the journey across that ocean is much shorter than the journey across the Aerith Ocean from Shan Chan to the Westlands.
But somehow the Sharans, or perhaps the Shan Chan, are just not interested in conquering Shara for the time being.
I mean, maybe they went up against them once and saw that there was this organized channeling force that they had to deal with. And
that's true, and Shara is more as a consolidated empire as opposed to Randland, which is many nations.
Mm-hmm. Some
powerful groups are just powerful groups inside those nations, and there is no leader of Randland for now.
Well, Brand's working on it.
Yeah.
Hence, Randland.
He just doesn't even know that yet.
Yeah. He only gets half of it, though. I just had a couple of things that the iridescent stone from the remains of a city sunk into the Sea of Storms sounds very much like Atlantis. And just that her furnishing is well-made and polished, which is that is Suan, well-made and heavily polished. Strong, simple. Yeah, her furniture reflects her personality.
Sanded down by hardship.
Exactly.
Sanded down to the important parts, anyway.
The strong, basic functionality. Not a lot of ornament. Unlike Elida, who's always using the power to make sure she's got flowers, and she has, decorative toys on her desk made of ancient ivory and, panels all over the place.
Yeah.
I imagine Elida's study is very colorful, maybe a little pink.
Swan's got, one uncomfortable chair. I just think of her office as sparse like that. Of course, it has the decorations that previous Amerlin's brought there.
I imagine the only sound in her office is the scratching of a pen. Scratch, 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 scratch.
Yeah. Read a little more. Min had only a rough idea how to curtsy. Halfway down, with her skirts already spread, she froze like a crouching toad. Swan Sanche was standing there, as regal as any queen, and for a moment she was also lying on the floor, naked. Aside from her being in only her skin, there was something odd about the image, but it vanished before Min could say what. It was as strong as a viewing as she had ever seen, and she had no idea what it meant.
So I think that's a stilled Suan is what's different about the image.
Yeah.
She doesn't look like Suan. She looks like someone who's been stilled, and her face has changed.
Oh, so she doesn't even really look like herself very much.
Exactly. So she's like, that's a weird... What? She can tell it's Suan, but it's
And after
off.
she's stilled, I suspect that Swan reverts, so she looks like a 16-year-old girl-ish, which is why she can pass.
I like that Min doesn't... I was going to say... She wears pants so often, she has no idea how to curtsy. She only knows how to bow.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Seeing things again, are you? The Amerlin said. Well, I can certainly make use of that ability of yours. I could have used it all the months you were gone, but we'll not talk of that. What's done is done. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills. She smiled a tight smile. But if you do it again, I'll have your hide for gloves. Stand up, girl. Leanne forces enough ceremony on me in a month, and at last any sensible woman would have in a year. I do not have time for it. Not these days. Now, what did you just see? You weren't wearing any clothes. I don't know what it means, Mother. Swan barked a short, mirthless laugh. No doubt I'll take a lover, but I have no time for that either. There's no time for winking at men when you're busy bailing the boat. Except Swan sometimes winks at girls, too. Just throwing it out there.
Have we mentioned the pentagram?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We've talked about it before, but maybe we should again. Before you break into it, I know you love this, but before you break into it, I just want to say people have been talking about the Wheel of Time a lot more in the last couple of weeks with the news, the show, Amazon, Sony, blah, 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 Rafe Judkins, blah, blah, blah. The point is, there's been a lot more people talking about the Wheel of Time on social media, and I have noticed that, kind of like when we first started the podcast, a lot of readers didn't realize things like there are black characters and there are gay characters. And I made a post a while back on Twitter saying, like, this is exciting. It's really cool to see a piece of fantasy literature possibly being turned into a show that does feature people of color, LGBTQ, like a hero that's someone other than a white guy, It's pretty rare. And I'm sure we can think of examples, but it's really rare. And so we should talk about that a lot, I guess is what I'm saying.
So the love pentagram, right? A lot of stories have a love triangle where you have a guy and two girls, a girl and two guys, and everyone's trying to decide. And the love pentagram is actually, it's not all happening at the same time, but it's these 5 people who have all had relationships with each other, and you can go from one to the other. So starting with Suon. Suon and Moraine were pillow friends in the tower as novices. Young women. Suon Sanche also ended up with Gareth Bryn.
Mm-hmm.
They got married, as we know, at the end of the series. Moraine ends up with Tom, the Gleeman,
who used to be with
Morghese. So both Gareth Bryn and Tom Merlin used to be with Morghese. So you can go Moraine, Tom, Morghese, Gareth, Suon, back to Moraine.
Mm-hmm.
I think the piece that people miss there is that the 2 women used to have more than just a friendship relationship when they were novices.
It's heavily implied that pillow friends are not friends,
right,
per se.
And I'll bring up one of the criticisms that I've heard is that you have all these women who are in non-straight relationships, but they all end up marrying men.
Yes.
And that is definitely like, there's no women that end up together. Well, no major characters that end up together, despite, So there's a certain amount of situational sexuality that occurs in Robert Jordan that may be slightly different than what we understand today. But again, let's remember this was published in 1994.
Yeah. So
25 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually relatively progressive for when it was published.
Leah, it's really progressive especially when it was published, considering there's not even that much out now.
Right.
But Leah, I totally agree with you. Sometimes people experiment in college, and it doesn't mean that you're gay, but I just really appreciate that there is any of that happening whatsoever. And, we can interpret this however, like maybe they're just both bi. I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're gay, but it does mean they're at least B out of the LGBTQ.
Right. I was listening to some Stormlight Archive, and there's a great scene in Bridge 4 where they're talking about like some stereotypical like reading is feminine, and they're like, "What? You can't say that. You want to have sex with guys?" And he's like, "No. That's like more masculine. I want nothing to do with women."
I've heard that argument before. Like,
it's like twice as masculine with 2 guys. And I thought that was a kind of a funny argument.
I'm also not saying that Swan or Moraine are gay or homosexual, but they certainly, I guess they had this homosexual experience.
And I feel like if you continue that for a certain period of time, it's a spectrum, and it's very hard to pin.
Sure,
we're using words and then saying, "Are you this or that?" or "Are you this or not?" And that's a binary thing, and sexuality exists on the spectrum, and that's why I say go listen to Dan Savage, because
Sure.
he makes an effort to actually unpack all this stuff in ways that I don't have the
Yeah.
language.
Sexuality is a spectrum, and it's a spectrum that can change at any time. It's not set in stone necessarily, unless you say so. We all define what that all is, but sure, experimentation happens. I just mean, I always thought the implication was that between Moraine and Swan there was more happening than...
Pillow Friends implies a relationship, which I feel like is beyond experimentation.
And it isn't explicitly stated, but it is hinted at later that other women who were considered to be pillow friends, in quotes, there was more going on, which is why people extrapolate further to say then, if that was happening between these two, then perhaps that was happening with what was happening between Moraine and Swan.
Right.
It is never explicitly stated. I feel like it's probably good to reiterate that I just liked that there is some diversity in race and sexuality in the Wheel of Time, which is super rare, especially in the series that came before it.
And I'm mostly pointing out what I think Robert Jordan's intentions are with the language, which I feel like, there's a difference between reality and what Robert Jordan was trying to say.
Yeah, and I feel like, especially at the time that this came out, like you were saying, like, it would have been pretty weird to be like, no, they were a couple. But then, they broke up, went on, had their own careers, slept with different people later. No big deal. Whereas in, the late 80s, God forbid, like, boys couldn't even kiss on TV. It was
still pretty
scandalous.
Rare.
Yeah, it is pretty rare. But, these days it's like, yeah, there's gay people, get over it. Whereas I think then it was a bit more of a, still a hot topic, but I just waded into the murk. I shouldn't be here. I'm sorry. I'm back and back out. Happy murking.
I don't think you can say something in this without having someone disagree with you. Like, you can't take a position in this argument because there are two opposing sides that both have validity. And so...
Sure. And I feel like Pillow Friends is non-specific for reasons. Because it's not meant... It's meant for you to interpret it.
Right. And I choose to interpret it.
Me too. I just want that to be real.
I want there to be non-straight relationships in the series because I know there are non-straight relationships in the real world with real people, and I want to believe these are real people. And so,
right, with powerful people even.
Yeah.
But in our world, until even now, most people, I suspect, if they're powerful people who are having unpopular kinds of relationships, you probably just wouldn't say that out loud so much, which I feel like...
And that was very, again, true in the era in which these books came out.
Yeah, and, yes, Jesus. And 10 years before these books came out was a serious time in gay rights stuff. And I do feel the early 80s was a rough time.
And I do feel like in the last three books, Brandon Sanderson does come out and say some of that explicitly. There are some actual gay relationships that persist in the last three books. But it didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was there already. And he just, again, said it explicitly. Shall we move on?
Yes.
So the Amerlin is immediately encounters Min and realizes she wants to use her in the future, and so attempts to hide her presence in the tower.
Oh, yeah.
So she's going to tell Gawain to shut up and send Sarah off to, hoe vegetables in the stereotypical Aes Sedai punishment, which is where she's telling everyone the Nynaeve and Egwene trio is right now.
For, quote, running away from the tower, right. They're, quote, being punished. They're doing penance outside of the tower. I'm continually air quoting. All of those statements are true.
Kinda.
In a way.
I do like here that Suan gets around the lying by saying, as far as you are concerned, and then says a lie.
This is what I intend for you to believe.
Right. I'm not saying it's the truth. I'm just saying it's true that I want you to believe it.
Truth isn't important.
No.
What's important is that you are ignorant.
It's just, oh man, she is skirting that oath so tight. She's twisting it up like a scarf in a dryer.
Yeah, she's a freaking master. She's very good at this.
A lot of practice. I mean, Min
spends a little while trying to express, like, hey, I'm trying to tell you about this thing. There's a bunch of people going to die. And Swan's like, yeah, no.
Well, I feel like
as more or less, she's like, unless you can give me something more specific, there's not very much I can do except what I'm doing already.
But at the same time, Swan's terrible at interpreting these things. She's like, well, when? Why can't you tell me when? And Min's like, well, that's not how it works. And she's like, well, unless I can stop it. And Min's like, well, you can't stop it. You can just only react, accept that this is a fact, that these people are going to die. It's all going to happen on the same day. And do what you can to prepare for an event like that, assuming it is going to happen. And instead, Suwon's like, well, I'll try and stop it. And Min's like, no. And that's why I feel like Min ends up getting super frustrated with Suwon when she's in the tower. Suwon is terrible at understanding what Min is telling her. Because she sees it more like a prophecy where it's like a little, you can push, you can pull, you can like make some changes and control it a little bit.
Yeah.
But this isn't that. These are like the truth. The pattern happens.
Kind of want to bring up that Swan is really speaking from this place of confidence when she says, like, well, you know, the Shining Walls held off the Aiel and Arthur Hawkwing. It's like, we don't really have to worry about armies coming here to kill people. So if these people are going to die, it's going to have to be like some unforeseen event, which
some internal struggle that causes a split. How? Jeez, wow. Yeah. No, it's not going to be external. Oh, and certainly it won't be armies. The Rakan are an issue.
Right.
That when the Shan-Chan attack. The four kingdoms worked together, and then the Shan-Chan nation attacked.
And Swan certainly doesn't see it coming.
No. Well, the split or the Shan-Chan attack?
The split.
The split, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, by the Shan-Chan attack, she's long gone from the tower.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Nobody sees that coming either.
Yeah.
After all that, Swan says, so, Moraine sent you with word, right? Like, that must be why you're here.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, here's what I know. Tell me what I don't.
I do want to say, here she talks about the collar from the Shan-Chan. So that's why I think...
Yeah.
Yeah, that always reading through this chapter, I always got really confused because I was like, what is she foreseeing? Is it the split or is it the attack of the Shan-Chan?
Several things at
once. I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think she's seeing a couple of different events.
And since her viewings are based person to person, like one doesn't not necessarily have anything to do with the next one.
Right. It just so happens that some of them are all going to happen on the same day.
Yeah.
And she knows
unless
that.
she says it does. Unless she says that they have something.
And a lot of these she doesn't say they happen on that day.
Yeah. And Swan's like, where's the boy, the shepherd? And Min's like, he's on his way to Tyr, and she's like, Kalendor.
What is Moraine thinking?
Yeah.
And she's like, it wasn't Moraine, it was Rand in the middle of the night. We're trying to chase him down.
Moraine means him to take the sword that cannot be touched out of the stone of Tyr. I swear I'll hang her in the sun to dry. I will make her wish she was a novice again. He cannot be ready for that yet.
Surprising lack of fish analogies in there. I guess hanging the fish out to dry.
Yeah. It was not, Min stopped to clear her throat, it was not Moraine's doing. Rand left in the middle of the night, by himself. The others followed, and Moraine sent me to tell you. They could be in Tyr by now. For all I know, he could have Kalendor by now. Burn him, Swan barked. By now, he could be dead. I wish he had never heard word of prophecies of the dragon. If I could keep him from hearing another, I would. But doesn't he have to fulfill the prophecies? I don't understand, Min's asking. The Amerlin leaned back against her table wearily, as though anyone even understands most of them. The prophecies aren't what makes him the Dragon Reborn. All that takes is for him to admit it. And he must have, if he's going for Kalendor. The prophecies are meant to announce to the world who he is, to prepare him for what is coming, to prepare the world for it. If Moraine can keep some control over him, she will guide him to the prophecies we can be sure of, when he is ready to face them. And for the rest, we trust that what he does is enough. We hope. For all I know, he's already fulfilled prophecies none of us understands. The light send it's enough.
He's definitely fulfilled prophecies you don't understand.
Yeah.
And if the prophecies are meant to guide him, why don't you want him to read them?
Elitism.
It's very much like I want to be in control. I want to interpret the prophecies, and I want him to act on the way I think they should be interpreted.
And these silly children with hay still in their hair from their tiny backwater nothing village don't understand enough about the world to interpret anything, including their role in it, especially their role in it. I think that's where she's coming from.
Totally. And Moraine is starting to come around to the idea that she sort of is more riding the wave of Ta'Viren simply because she has been tumbled enough times that she eventually figures out she can guide it better by submitting and riding the wave. Whereas I feel like Suan still hasn't learned that lesson. She still thinks she can push the wave around. And if you've ever been at a beach and tried to push a wave around, you know that doesn't work out very well for you.
Min tells Swan about the viewing related to herself in respect to Rand.
Right, the three women.
And that she's one of them.
Does she still not know who any of the three is? I thought she
Did
knew
she
who
lie
Elaine.
right there?
I think so, because I think she knows who Elaine is. She's met her; she'd immediately recognize her, right? They spent all that time in the White Tower together.
For anyone who doesn't have the book in front of them, I'll read this really quickly. The first time I ever saw Rand, I saw 3 women's faces, and one of them was mine. I've never seen anything about myself before or since, but I knew what it meant. I was going to fall in love with them. All 3 of us were. 3, Swan responds. The other 2. Who are they? Min gave her a bitter smile. Their faces were blurred. I don't know who they are. Did she lie?
I think. Oh
Leia
yeah,
thinks she's lying.
she absolutely knows who that Elaine is one of the 3. She doesn't know who Avienda is yet.
I'd have to look back to she doesn't know who Avienda is.
Yeah. So I think she definitely admits to holding things back from the Amyrlin.
Yeah.
Here, and that I think is one of them.
That seemed like a direct lie.
Unless it's a mistake by Jordan,
But I think Leia says she says that later a second ago, and I think she knows her and Elaine, but she's like, and a third woman who I don't know.
Right.
That rings a bell to me.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I just don't know how to place it in the story. I mean, certainly she didn't know the first time she saw Rand because she hadn't met Elaine yet.
Right. That's true.
But, I mean, they got abducted in Shanshan together. Like,
they're kind of close.
Yeah.
They know each other well now.
Sorry, in Falma, not Shanshan. By the Shanshan.
Oh, right.
I like that Suan is able to call out Min and be like, I know you're afraid for your man. I recognize that. She like immediately senses that Min doesn't tell her that she's into Rand. She pulls it right out of her. I thought that was very astute of her. That's before she tells her about the 3.
3, the other 2. Who are they? Min gave her a bitter smile. The faces were blurred. I don't know who they are. Nothing to say he would love you in return? Nothing. He has never looked at me twice. I think he sees me as a sister.
You know, one way to fix that is to sit on his lap and flirt with him and kiss him on the cheek until he sees you as something other than a sister.
Well, it starts working in a little bit.
And he really doesn't ever see her as a sister. He's just got that like respectful Two Rivers, like she has always intrigued him. Always.
So don't think you can use me as a leash on him, because it will not work. Yet you do love him. I don't have any choice. Min tried to make her voice less sullen. I tried treating it as a joke, but I can't laugh anymore. You may not believe me, but when I know what it means, it happens. The Amyrlin tapped a finger against her lips and looked at Min consideringly. That look worried Min. She had not meant to make such a show of herself, nor to tell as much as she had. She had not told everything, but she knew she should have learned by now not to give an Aes Sedai a lever, even if she did not see how it could be used. Aes Sedai were skilled at finding ways.
Yeah.
Swan just found her way.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, Swan knows exactly where Min's loyalties lie, and she can, and that's, I mean, in some ways, it just lets her trust Min to get her out and to take her to Saladar and be a companion. But, I mean, this is how she knows Min is not a dark friend.
I think, yes. I think there's a couple of things going on here. One is that Min just gave away that she's inarguably connected to Rand, and there is no way around it.
No.
She just laid that out.
Right.
And another is that, obviously, I mean, Swan already knew this, but she has this incredible ability to glean things about the future that no one else could possibly know. And so Swan starts tapping her lips like, I see how you fit into my plan. Glad you don't have one, kid.
Nope. It's makeup time. No.
I'm going to skim over this really quick.
You mustn't be recognized. You catch no fish if they see the net. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
You can't pass up the fish analogies. What fish do you expect to catch with me? Min asked. The black Ajah. 13 of them fled, but I fear more remain. Yeah, there's a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like in the early books, you have no idea that it's like a third of all Aes Sedai. You're like, oh, it's this small pocket of evildoers. Like, and 13 makes a lot of sense because they're 13 Forsaken, so 13 Black Aja, 13 Murdraw. Like, that all sort of comes together, and then you're like, the problem's a little bit bigger than that. Thank you, Varen.
You've been planning this since I walked in, haven't you? Min responds. That's why you want to keep Gawain and Sarah quiet.
Yep.
Is this what you did to Egwene and Elaine and Nynaeve? Send them off after the Black Aja? I wouldn't put it past you.
Yep.
You tend your own nets, child, and let those girls tend theirs. As far as you're concerned, they're working penance on a farm.
That's not an answer.
Do I make myself plain? As far as you're concerned, you already said this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's not an answer.
No, she said nothing.
No.
She said, this is what you will believe. Too good. And then I have a longish, funny readout of Min's perspective here.
Yeah.
I suppose it won't kill me to wear this a little longer. Suddenly, Swan looked amused. Min felt her hackles rising. I fear that won't be enough. Min in a dress is still Min in a dress to anyone who looks close. You cannot always wear a cloak with the hood up. No, you must change everything that can be changed. For one thing, you will continue to go by Elmendretta. It is your name, after all. Min winced. Your hair is almost as long as Leanne's, long enough to put in curls. For the rest, I never had any use for rouge and powder and paints, but Leanne remembers the use of them. Min's eyes had grown wider by the word since the mention of curls. Oh, no, she gasped. No one will take you for Min who wears breeches once Leanne makes you into a perfect Elmendretta. Oh, no. As to why you are staying in the tower, a reason suitable for a fluttery young woman who looks and acts nothing at all like Min. The Emerald frowned thoughtfully, ignoring Min's efforts to break in. Yes, I will let it be put about that the mistress Elmendretta managed to encourage 2 suitors to the point that she has to take shelter from them in the tower until she can decide between them. A few women still claim such sanctuary each year, and sometimes for reasons just as silly. Her face hardened, and her eyes sharpened. If you're still thinking about Tyr, think again. Consider whether you can be of more help to Rand there or here. If the Black Aja brings the tower down, or worse, gains control, he loses the little help I can give. So, are you a woman or a lovesick girl? Trapped. Min could see it as plainly as a shackle on her leg. Do you always get your way with people, Mother? The Amerlin smile was even colder this time. Usually, child. Usually.
That "oh no" in Kate Redding's voice is one of my favorite, like...
Really?
Yeah, oh no! Like, the way she does it just, like, makes you really feel just how horrified Min is to be put in curls and a dress and makeup. And I feel that. I feel that on a deep, deep level.
Oh no, she gasped. No one will take you for Min who wears breeches once Lyanna makes you into a perfect Elmendretta. Oh no!
We have a little bit of housekeeping to do.
Mostly, I want to talk about the patrons. We've had just a massive jump in donations. And I think you guys responded pretty well to the conversation we had last time where we thanked everybody and all of a sudden
Yeah,
got
people
a lot more donations. I
love
don't
it
know.
when we yell their names out.
They really do.
We are never going to stop doing that.
No. The goal here is to actually add a little more structure to the podcast and maybe actually thank everybody on a regular basis. So I don't end up with the situation I currently have, which is I have 43 names to read out today, Patrick.
Yeah, so this is a special edition of the What Spoilers podcast, and all we're going to do is read names for a half an hour.
Yeah.
Just kidding, it won't take that long, but...
No, but there will be a bit of a chunk, so strap yourselves in, listen to some names, and start cringing at my pronunciations. And this is a good number of people who have upped their pledges, as well as a large chunk of new donors.
We call out everyone who does anything like that.
Okay, and I'm starting September 26th.
Damn, that far back.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's only been 3 weeks. Usually, this was an exceptional month.
It was. But also, we haven't done that many episodes in the last 3 weeks. We've been doing all the SpoilerCon stuff, which we'll talk about here in a minute.
That's next on the list.
Definitely. Britt Workman upped his pledge. I'm just going to run through this pretty quick.
Okay.
So, Christopher Bodeger upped his pledge quite a bit.
Thanks, Chris.
Christine Rice. Yeah, Christine.
I think I know that name. Thank you, Christine.
Natalie Pearson upped her pledge.
Thank you, Miss Pearson.
Devin Moore pledged just a ridiculous amount. Thank you, Devin.
Mr. Satanas, you are a kind soul.
That's just a wonderful thing you did for us. Vincent Wells pledged.
We appreciate you, Vincent.
Is a new pledge. Nola Pierce is a new pledge.
Nola.
Justin is a new pledge.
Thank you, Justin.
Steven Zuber is new. Caleb Nelson is new. Ellie M.M. is new.
We love every single one of you.
Christina Johnson is new.
I'm already out of ways to say thank you. Thank you.
And that gets us through September. Starting October 1st, we have Astrid Jeff.
Thank you, Astrid. You've been around a while.
Sean McVicar upped his pledge, actually.
We appreciate you tremendously.
Lauren Ballew. That's...
Ballew? Thank you, Lauren.
Ballew. Thies Colm.
Thank you, Thies. We're sure we're getting your name wrong. We're sorry, and thank you.
Michelle Bell.
Thank you, Michelle.
I like the rhyming that goes on in that name.
I went to school with a girl that had the same nickname, but her last name was Bielfiore.
And they called her Michelle Bell.
Michelle Bell.
Jake Bobo upped.
Thank you, Jake.
Catherine Black pledged. Sean Culp pledged. Jenny Peters pledged.
Silas M. Augustine? Silas. That's a nice name. Thank you, Silas.
Caleb Kustra. Christopher Boatwell.
Appreciate you guys.
Janusz Maruzak. Sorry, I know I'm getting that one wrong.
Well, hopefully that's at least a recognizable way that you.
Samantha Mattingly. Jeffrey Fehmel.
Thank you, guys.
Tom Morganthien.
Thank you, Tom.
Anna Michaels.
Appreciate you, Anna.
Max Miner. Upped by Mike Estep.
Thank you, Mike.
Caleb Blankenship.
Caleb Blankenship, all in caps.
John Lasher.
Thank you, John.
David McBean.
Appreciate you, David.
Glenn T. Donovan. Jonathan Morgantini.
Huh. I don't know who that is.
He upped his pledge. Yeah. Thank you, Lore Master.
Seriously, thank you.
Zach Harper.
Thanks, Zach.
Eric Niergaard.
I think, yes. I think that's exactly right. I think that's just the more traditional spelling of Eric.
Yeah, but the EI, I'm going to add a little Eric.
Eric? Maybe, perhaps. Sorry, we're terrible at speaking anything other than English, and we don't even do that well.
Me fail English? That's impossible.
Oh, good Simpsons reference.
Elliot Arzumanian.
Thank you, Elliot.
I think people really just make up names to make this hard for me.
Now that you said that, that's going to be everybody's going to have a 16-syllable last name from now on.
Because you can put anything you want in here. I'm going to read it out. Nikki Russell.
Thank you, Nikki.
Tex DeVry.
Tex. I feel like I know you from the internet.
Robert Meekin.
I was trying to puzzle that earlier, but yeah.
Robert McMeekin.
McMeekin? Thanks, Bob.
That's one way to shorten it. Christina Johnson jumped up her pledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, with Russian spelling.
Kevin Schuler. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Kevin.
And Rachel Parker.
Rachel Parker. And all of you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to everybody. That was a ridiculous list to read, and I couldn't stop grinning the entire time.
And patronage is now getting to the point. Seth and I were talking about this while we were doing notes like an hour ago. So like last year, it took us like 2.5 months of the patron donations saved up to go to JordanCon, which happens this spring. So not too far off, half a year, but
Right.
not too far off. This year, it's 1 month is just going to pay for us to go. And I suppose I'm just segueing right into housekeeping stuff here, but over the next couple of days, we'll be putting our heads together with the people that run JordanCon, and we want, as Watt Spoilers, to do at least 2 Watt Spoilers panels, but there's also a pretty strong possibility that we're going to be on other people's panels. So, like,
That's also possible.
other people are going to be doing stuff, and we sent them saying, like,
Patrick, you may be jumping the gun on that a little bit.
well, we sent a message saying, like, and there's kind of an open invitation, like, you know,
We applied to be a guest.
yeah.
So if you go to their thing and fill out the form, anyone can apply to be a guest. And our assumption is we're going to get it.
Especially since we kind of know the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Some of them have been on the show. A couple of them have been on the show.
right. So I'm not too worried about that. But we haven't like heard back from them or anything.
Yeah. And our kind of, we just want to, last year we spent a lot of time like drinking and going to other people's events that they did at JordanCon, which was awesome. And we just did our like own Watt Spoilers crew thing at the end. But this year we kind of want to turn into a little more active than that, or a lot.
Yeah.
A little less day drinking.
Well,
A little less.
a little less, not a lot less. I want to do a panel on Usquai.
Hey, I think that's a great idea. Seth makes Usquai.
And I think we should do a How to Podcast panel.
Yeah?
Because technically we're freaking awesome. And the volume that we put out is ridiculous.
That's true.
And then, of course, we need to do a live recording. So that's 3 right there that I would that I suggested. A panel about making Usquai.
An instructional panel on how to day drink.
There will be Usquai at the panel on how to make Usquai. For those of you who got a sample of it at SpoilerCon. Speaking of SpoilerCon, we jumped right to JordanCon because it's the next thing coming up, but we need to talk a little bit about what just happened this past weekend.
Yes, our Ruth mistress at Leia on Discord. I won't yell your real name out unless you want us to, but did a ton, pretty much all the work in organizing SpoilerCon, which was really
I did
awesome.
A little.
Seth did a little. I did what people told me to do.
Uh-huh.
And but yeah, we had a really great time, and we did a live recording that just got released today, which is, I don't know when this podcast will get out, but probably in a week or so.
Yeah, I released at like 1 a.m. this morning, which is about when I went to bed.
Oh, right.
Fun coincidence.
Yeah, and there were just a bunch of events. We did that little live recording that's released in the free feed, and we did like a hike that some people went on, a coffee tour. We did a little hanging around in bars, and it was awesome. First time Watt Spoilers recorded in front of a live studio audience, but it wasn't a studio, it was a bar.
You know what? Bar, studio, it's just semantics.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. A studio is a room where 2 people sit and record things.
And in fairness, it wasn't technically a bar. It was an event space above a bar.
Right. We got our own little private, well, not that little, because like 25 people fit in it, 30 people, whatever it was. A lot.
A lot, yeah.
More than I ever would have expected. I thought when we first had plans for SpoilerCon, I was like, cool, like 5 people will show up and we'll like kick it and talk. And it turned into much bigger than that.
Leah's telling me the official count was 22.
At the bar. Awesome.
Leia. And it was so much fun. And I wanted to thank everyone, A, who came.
Yeah.
And B, we got a bunch of swag from folks, and I wanted to say thank you to those people who gave us stuff.
Oh, man, yes. Cody, you're here right now. Dude, thank you. I already said this to you while you were here in Portland, but...
Those coasters were lit, I agree.
Yes. I'm going to keep them forever. Seriously. Yeah. I am not a sentimental person. I throw away shit all the time because I just don't care to have a lot of stuff. That is the kind of thing I'm going to keep forever.
And I mean, they're these thick chunks of wood, laser engraved. They're gorgeous. And they were square for everyone else, but he made one for me and Patrick that were both personalized and circular.
With
And
our
they're just-
names
with our
on
names
it.
And I love that it's got like the Watt Spoilers podcast around the rim. Like it looks so professional.
Yeah,
And
it looks
it's,
super legit.
it's honestly not something I could like go out and buy. Like I wouldn't know how to get something like this made.
I feel like that's the kind of thing where you have to go on Etsy and pay someone a lot of money to
A lot,
design and
yeah.
create something for you.
No, they were gorgeous. And I've got some left over to send out. And yes, Travis, you are getting one. And I don't want to. I want to like keep them forever. So, but I'll be sending them out.
Wicked Smack, if you feel so inclined, you can check out our like Instagram, Facebook, one of those. There are definitely photos of timber floating around.
Yeah, if you at Seth JJ on Instagram, that's my personal Instagram, and it's 95%
Pictures of timber, yeah. Oh, that's a cute picture of timber. I don't even know where to start or end thanking people. This past weekend was so freaking awesome. It made me feel like a celebrity just for showing up. People drove all the way to freaking Portland from Alberta, Canada, and came from a bunch of different places in the States.
Those freaking Canadians.
That's a long drive to
It's a
come down and
long
have
drive.
some beers.
Totally. And I also want to say thank you to Kelsey for those posters she gave us. She
Yes.
printed out our icon on it, which I've always wanted to do, but I never did that for myself.
Yeah.
And then having the signatures along the rim was absolutely wonderful. Like that means a lot. So those are both hanging up in places in the house.
Yeah.
They may move around, but
Well, we'll figure it out.
they're awesome. They make me smile every time I see them. I, of course, wanted to thank Aganor for the Just Roll With It present he gave out to all of us Just Roll With It folks. He gave me a Lord of the Rings book with a lot of really cool lore and gorgeous pictures, and it's this big, beautiful hardback. And I can't wait to like really sit down with it and like get a little more into the Wheel of Time lore, because it's readable in a way that I don't feel like I've ever had a chance to really get into.
Oh, yeah. I stayed up really late hanging out with Morgantini and playing D&D with a group of people in the basement of a Airbnb that a lot of people stayed in. It was like a full, like, big family house that they got for the weekend.
I think you discovered your love of D&D last night.
Well, I knew
Or
that I
that night.
loved it.
Yeah. I mean, you were like, I want to do this forever.
It's so much fun, and I haven't played in years. Like, I haven't really sat down and played in a real long time. That was the first time I, like, sat down and played something semi-serious. And Aganor's an awesome DM.
Yeah, totally. And although I did figure out why he has trouble keeping his volume levels consistent, it's because he can't sit still
He, like,
while he's
stands
DMing.
near the microphone and, like, moves around and gestures.
He's like jumping up and
He's, like,
down.
really
and
into
I'm
it.
like, oh, okay, that's what's going on. Aganor, I might need to switch you over to a lapel mic
Yeah.
for Just Roll With It, because that's the only way we're going to keep your volume level consistent.
When I was playing, Seth, like, mentioned it to me, and I was like, we got to get that guy a headset. Like,
I wanted to thank Neil for his forest tour on the hike. Neil is...
a forestry student.
Yeah.
I forget at exactly what level, but
and sort of started just talking about the trees around us. He says PhD.
ogier tendencies.
Yeah. And so, it's always wonderful to have someone who's actually educated and knows a lot about this, about nature, start telling you about it in a very British accent. I mean, I love David Attenborough, like that's my jam. And it felt very...
Oh, perfect.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was just right up there.
He did ask, I want to throw this out there. Neil, did you say if we could do it at the end of September instead of the beginning of October next year or something like that, then you could actually make it while still on your student visa? Because he's an English dude or something. Throw it out there. I would love to accommodate that, especially if it's by changing the date by a few days. Like, forget it. Yeah, no problem.
Either way, I'm going to make you, I think I've already told you this, I'm going to make you be a guest at some point just because I want your voice on the podcast. It's very soothing. It's wonderful. I also want to apologize for the person who I signed your book. Thanks for coming to the first Jordan Con. It's not Jordan Con.
That's somebody else's con.
It's hard to sign people's books. It's really, really hard.
A couple of local folks came that we didn't know from Discord already, and I think it was one of those guys.
Did I do it in more than
in Devin's
one book? I did it to Josh too. The idea of having someone ask me to sign a book is so foreign to me.
That was weird. Not that I mind doing it.
No,
I'm not saying
no.
that, but I'm just saying, like, holy shit, that made me feel like a celebrity.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Josh. I can hold on to that forever.
You can hold on to that goofy mistake.
You get to hold on to my mistakes. Yeah. We'll be better next time. That was just very unexpected for us. We love you guys, and we didn't expect the level of love that came back at us.
Yeah, it's a little surreal. I just kind of floated through and pretended like things were normal, which is what I do when I'm overwhelmed. All right.
I took solace in a lot of really bad puns. I somehow, I went back and listened to the live recording, and I had to edit out so many terrible puns, and I definitely missed a few.
Wow, that makes my handwriting look really nice. Although I suppose it is a literal picture of my handwriting. So
you have nice handwriting, Patrick. That's why I made you do it.
I spent a long time practicing when I was a kid.
So here's my suggestion. I will sign your book with my name. Patrick will write you a message.
My grandmother really cared that I had nice handwriting, and so I was required to practice for cookies, generally, is how that worked. And I got pretty good at it.
That explains so much. I've always wondered, I was like, man, you do really have nice handwriting.
Yeah.
I do not. I really have never been able to make my hand work in a way that makes something.
I remember she even taught me a method for if you have to handwrite a very important letter. And so, only a person who grew up during the Great Depression would think this is important. But if you have to handwrite a very important letter, you can put a piece of paper on top of the piece of paper that you're going to write the letter on. And then you write with a pen that has no ink or with a pencil, and you just press a little hard. And then you can lift the piece of paper and shine a light on it in such a way that you can retrace and fix all your mistakes. You write it slowly and meticulously, so it's pretty, and it impresses people. Except it almost never fucking comes up anymore. When do I write with a pen? Almost never.
Yeah. Devin, I didn't even realize I wrote that in your book.
First Jordan Con was amazing.
Oh, I am officially blushing right now. Oh, man. It was so great to see you. I felt like I was high the whole weekend. And I really didn't even drink that much. But there was so much going on and so many people. It was amazing. And I take no responsibility. Yep, there I am. I completely froze in that picture because I realized I had written Jordan Con in a big old Sharpie. I am so glad you got that picture, Leah, I say with gritted teeth.
Anything else? John, Elder Builder, you're the best. Fire Phoenix says more timber. More timber sounds.
But there was enough spontaneous just shouting out, and the mic was, again, something to thank Cody for. He had a good all-around mic for picking up general sound, which let us pick up the questions without having to pass around a mic.
Yeah, it definitely turned into a group conversation by the end, but that's kind of okay. And it was really fun to do a casual thing. And also, half the people who showed up to SpoilerCon are already, mods in Discord or whatnot. So, we're already really close and talk basically every day anyway, so it was kind of more weird to associate screen names and personalities with faces and voices than it was to actually know that these people exist,
I was going to say, there was definitely a moment where a stranger would walk up to me and say, hey, I love you, and I'd be like, great, who are you? And then they'd tell me their screen name, and there would be this weird, disassociation in my head, and the person's face would snap into view, and they would be my friend instantly. Because I spent so much time talking to them online, but I had no face to associate with the name.
Yeah.
It was so crazy to have this, like, someone go from a complete stranger to an old friend in half a second when they told me their screen name.
It's super cool. They're our internet friends, except now you're real life friends.
Like, that usually happens over time. You meet somebody and you get to know their face and you get to know them, and those sort of come together. And this was like the opposite of I knew them, but I had to like put the face to the personality, and it was so backwards.
Oh, I gotta say,
it hurt my head.
Julia was telling me the other day that it was particularly weird for her because people knew who she was, but she has almost nothing to do with the podcast.
Right. Well, you talk about her, so
And,
people know a little
like,
bit about her. Yeah.
People like see my personal Instagram that's like kind of a, you know, out there in the world. Some
Sure.
podcast listeners already follow my personal Instagram, and like there's pictures of us, and then, you know, she comments on stuff, so people knew who she was right away. And she's like, you know, has no idea why we're calling each other bizarre names like Agonor, you know, or
which is just as normal to us as like Morgantini or John. Like, that all, you know.
Poor girl has only read The Eye of the World. She has no idea what's going on.
I can't believe I spoiled Egwene's death for her.
Well, yeah, when we were talking about the chapter, we were like, well, she does die later, and I just saw Julie on the audience like put her face in her hand. Like, damn it.
If you listen to the episode, when I say that, there's an audience reaction. And I think it was because they saw her reaction to me saying it.
Yeah, she's book one. Like, Egwene just got to the tower for the first time.
And I had to be like, it's spoilers. Like, it's in the name. It's what we do.
No. Don't feel bad. I don't. It like brought it together. You know, you
Totally.
forget. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I forget
kind of
that,
where
like,
you are. And
Right. And someone new walks in. And it's like, and I think I said this, if you've read nothing, the statement, Egwene dies at the end, means nothing to you.
Right.
You don't care. Right? Like, it doesn't matter. If you've read all the books, it means nothing because you know that already. If you've read the first book,
or
it's
even
a
like the
problem.
first bunch.
Even if you've read more than the first book,
What?
it's like, no.
Yeah. Well, it's probably Gawain's fault. So.
Of course, it's Gawain's fault. Can I just say there's going to be some epic Gawain bitching about in this tonight?
We do generally try to not hate on any particular character, or at least glaze over it, but you know what?
Gawain's a free target.
Does anyone like Gawain? That's a bunch of no's.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?